Dialectical Journal Unit 1 by Taylor Madison. In this video, I will be covering Sula by Toni Morrison. Prologue, quote of interest, which accounted for the fact that the white people lived in the rich valley floor in that little river town in Ohio, and the blacks populated the hills above it, taking small consolation in the fact that every day they could literally look down on the white folks. Maybe it was the bottom of heaven. Page 5 to 6. I found Morrison's reversal of roles intriguing because usually in a town where black people and white people are segregated, the blacks are looked down upon by the whites, who think of themselves as superior. In this town, blacks are discriminated against, but they find a way to feel free of the watchful eye of the slave masters. They live in a town nicknamed the Bottom because it is supposedly the bottom of heaven. The name implies the opposite of its location because it is situated on top of a hill where the soil is rocky and dry. Once the black people identify this, they realize that while they work, they literally are looking down on the people who think they control them. I liked this attitude that they adopted. Part 1, 1919, quote of interest. He expected to be terrified or exhilarated, to feel something very strong. Wincing at the pain in his foot, he turned his head a little to the right and saw the face of a soldier near him fly off. Pages 7 to 8. Shadrach's description of the feeling he had while on the battlefield was completely unexpected. Similar to him, I thought he would be terrified of being confronted by guns and death. Instead, he just focuses on the pain in his foot. It is not until he sees the face of a soldier be blown off that he realizes how close he is to his life possibly ending. However short this event is, it seems to wake him up. He begins to feel the pain of the event after he wakes up in the hospital and is discharged with post-traumatic stress syndrome. 1920, quote of interest. The grandmother took Helene away from the soft lights and flowered carpets of the sundown house and raised her under the dulcet eyes of a multicolored Virgin Mary, counseling her to be constantly on guard for any sign of her mother's wild blood. Page 17. In an attempt to escape her mother's legacy, Helene marries a man by the name of Willie Wright. The title Wright is significant because it shows how desperate she was to be accepted within the Bottom. Her mother had been a disgrace whom no one wanted to be associated with. Helene tries to do the right thing by being a model citizen and mother. All her effort goes towards suppressing the vulnerability that she has felt from the time she was born. 1921, quote of interest. Quickly, as the whoosh of flames engulfed him, she shut the door and made her slow and painful journey back to the top of the house. Page 48. Plum is Eva's favorite child, yet she commits a wicked crime by showering him in kerosene and lighting him on fire. I was astonished that a mother would do this to her child. There is no justification that makes it understandable. Plum is described as being in a dreamlike state right before his death. On the one hand, it is good that he was not afraid of what was about to happen, but at the same time, how could he think that the gas smelled deeply attractive? He mistakenly thought that he was being baptized in some way when he was really being murdered by his own mother. 1922, quote of interest. A bargeman pulling away from the shore found Chicken late that afternoon, stuck in some rocks and weeds, his knickers ballooning about his legs. He would have left him there, but noticed that it was a child, not an old black man, as it first appeared. He shook his head in disgust at the kind of parents who would drown their own children. Page 63. First of all, I was shocked that the two girls did nothing to try to save Chicken after he went in the water. Second, they were more worried about being caught than about the fact that they had just accidentally killed a little boy. How could they live with themselves knowing that they had a devastating secret? The quote I chose shows the lack of respect that white people had for the blacks. The bargeman would have left the person there had it been an old black man. The only reason he recovered the body was because it was a child's. Also, he automatically assumes that the child's parents drowned him. It amazes me that he thought black parents cared less about their children than white parents. 1923, quote of interest. Being helpless and thinking baby thoughts and dreaming baby dreams and messing up his pants again and smiling all the time. I had room enough in my heart, but not in my womb. Not no more. Page 71. Eva thought that it was better to have Plum die while he was still a man rather than being thought of as a drunk, childlike drug addict. She also felt that if he stayed alive, he would become increasingly dependent on her. She did not want this to happen because he was a grown man and she was not prepared to take care of him again. The longer he was on drugs, the more she feared for his safety. 1927, quote of interest. So it was rage and a determination to take on a man's role, anyhow, that made him press Nell about settling down. He needed some of his appetites filled, some posture of adulthood recognized, but mostly he wanted someone to care about his hurt, to care very deeply. Page 82. I felt bad for Nell because Wiley Wright decided to marry her based on the fact that he did not feel like a man. He was depressed about not getting to build the road and do man's work, so he felt that he needed to have a woman to come home to who would feel sorry for him and ask him how his day went. Nell decided to marry him because she wanted to do the respectable thing. Women were supposed to get married and take care of the kids in the house. She was so busy avoiding her mother's stigma that she forgot what marriage is about: love. Part 2, 1937, quote of interest. Don't talk to me about no burning. You watch your own mama, you crazy roach. You, the one who should have been burnt. Page 93. This quote was part of a conversation between Eva and Sula following her return to Medallion, Ohio after 10 years of absence. She attempts to interrogate Eva about lighting Plum on fire, only to be shut down by Eva's remark about her watching her own mother burn to death. No one had ever commented on Sula's reaction to Hannah's death, so she was caught off guard by the implication that she did not care. I felt sorry for Sula because no one should have to hear that their grandmother wishes they had burned instead. I believe that Eva crossed the line of respect, especially considering her own actions. 1939, quote of interest. But it was the men who gave her the final label, who fingerprinted her for all time. They said that Sula slept with white men. It may not have been true, but it certainly could have been. She was obviously capable of it. Page 112. Of all of Sula's peculiar actions, sleeping with white men earned her the final stamp of disapproval. Those who had tried to be accepting finally adopted the attitude that she carried evil in her back pocket. No one could understand why she would want to have short affairs with white men, considering the segregation laws and the tainting of blood. Sula was a different kind of woman. She disregarded what others thought of her, which allowed her to be independent and free of responsibilities. Her spontaneous nature was what set her apart from the others. However, they were not able to view it as commendable. They only saw her as being weird. 1940, quote of interest. About who was good, how you know it was you. What you mean? I mean, maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was me. Page 146. I thought this question was quite intuitive of Sula because according to the town, Nell was the good person and Sula was evil. However, there is another side of the perspective in which Sula could be viewed as a symbol of what is independent. She had her own mind and she did not let others dictate what was right and wrong. Nell fell prey to not wanting to stand out. In these ways, the two women were different, but they had traits that drew them together, such as both being able to live with their participation in Chicken's death. 1941, quote of interest. Without her mockery, affection for others sank into flaccid disrepair. Daughters who had complained bitterly about the responsibilities of taking care of their aged mothers-in-law had altered when Sula locked Eva away, and they had begun cleaning without a murmur. Now that Sula was dead and done with, they returned to a steeping resentment of the burdens of old people. Page 153 to 154. This change within the community was boldly evident as I was reading the novel. I noticed they were united in disliking her, but as soon as she was gone, they splintered apart. People stopped helping their neighbors in trying times, and they became increasingly impatient with their friends and children. This showed that without her bonding them together, they were worse off. I was surprised that this would happen because I always thought that black communities that had worked under white slave masters were kind and generous with what they had. It never occurred to me that they would be as judgmental about someone as the white people were about them. (1965) Quote of interest. You, Sula, what's the difference? You was there. You watched, didn't you? Me, I never would have watched. Just alike, both of you. Never was no difference between you. page 168 through 169. Nell was shocked to hear these words echoed from Eva's mouth because she had never thought of herself as being similar to Sula. She had thought that she had avoided being like her when in fact Eva saw right through her efforts. In this section of the book, it is brought to Nell's attention that she played as much of a role in Chicken's death as Sula. She had always blamed the event on her friend, so hearing this made the emotions of the event come flooding back. I was astonished that she had felt completely innocent for all those years.